All right, so I was gonna walk you guys through a little bit of how to use GitHub, or at least how I view using GitHub and Git, okay? So hopefully you guys have some familiarity. First of all, you guys should now all have a Git profile, is that right? Okay, no one doesn't have a Git profile, right? So hopefully that's not all news to you. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen then. And let me move you guys out of the way. And this still makes me feel slow when I do this. Okay. Cool. And can you guys all see me? Or see my screen? Yeah? Okay, I'll keep you guys over there so I can see you well. All right. So let me show you. Yeah? It's kind of pinched.
Yeah. I don't know if you can fix that or if that's just.
I'm sorry, say that one time. It's pinched or?
Like it's taking up half the screen. I don't know if that's just my screen or.
That better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think my window was just off to the side like that. That's probably why. Okay, so first of all, so you should really think of Git and GitHub as two separate things. Git is the tool. GitHub is kind of like this extra thing to put your repo. So I'm going to kind of go through a whole bunch of this. So let me just show you my profile. So you guys probably know when you go to your profile, my GitHub's been slow today. Okay, so you see your stuff right here. You can see your repos. You can see people follow you and all that stuff. Not super important. My big thing is that the repos. But when you come over here in your overview, quick thing is that you'll see like this part. You guys probably have seen this contributions, this like green area, right? This basically is what, to be honest, most recruiters will look at first. This is what they'll see, and they'll say, hey, how active have they been with GitHub? And that kind of gives them a quick like, hey, okay, what's this person doing? If they look like this, which is actually not a good representation, oh, this is something important. So like if it looks like this, you're like, oh, like they didn't really do anything. They're lazy. No, like it's like, okay, they haven't really been active on GitHub. One thing to note is that this actually, for me at least, is not actually true. I do have other stuff here, but the reason why it happens is that if you change your GitHub identifier, like for here, mine's like Mr. Geislinger, it will be something else. If you change this, this will likely get rid of all the commits that you've done, and your thing might disappear like this. So my suggestion to you guys is that because you guys are making your GitHub profile probably for professional reasons, you want, you know, a recruiter or whoever to be able to see this stuff, right? Is that if your thing isn't like a professional profile name, and professional just means, you know, nothing too silly, probably avoid numbers, you know, if it's just like a random like last set of numbers, it might not be like the most professional thing. I'm not saying it can't have numbers, but if you're looking to make it professional, I would change this as soon as you can, because if you change it later on, your commits and you do all this work will likely not show up on here. And that's honestly like, you can still see everything, but this is what the recruiter is going to look at. They're going to look at all what you've done. And that's the first thing they're going to see. Okay, so good tip to have. But for the project, you guys should all be doing your project in a repo, okay? And so there's a couple ways we can do this, but I'm going to show you my process, and I'll slack out a couple tutorials that you can probably check out. So you can make a new repo by just clicking up here on GitHub, new repository, okay? There's also import repository, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So I do a new repository, okay? And this is basically like, this is my own thing. I'm not forking it from anywhere, I'm not copying anything, I'm making my own repository. And so I'll just put in like, you know, test repo. Okay, and again, try to keep it descriptive if you can, you know. For example, you could put mod one project, but I would probably, since it's probably for recruiters, I would put something like, oh, like, you know, let's say Kong City, whatever it is, Kong City data, I don't know, data exploration project or something like that. Like that, okay? Something that's at least relatively meaningful. It doesn't have to be super long, but don't just put like project one, just because you're trying to show when someone looks at the repo, they want to know quickly like what that is, okay? And then you can put your description. You can always add that in later, so I won't put it right here. Make it public. You can make it private. GitHub used to charge for this feature, but now it's free. But I actually think that's a bad thing. in ways for like what you guys want to do, you probably want to make your thing public so then recruiters can see what you're doing. And again, like Eli says, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Your goal is to really just put things out there to show that you're doing things and you're showing that you have stuff. And people realize on GitHub, it's not going to be perfect. And that's fine, because in a lot of senses, there's nothing that's perfect. And you're not doing like professional development coding. Like you're not pushing out, you're not deploying out something that someone has professionally used. You're basically showing what projects you're doing yourself. Okay, so make it public. You can initialize with a README, which basically means that you can have a new part, but we're not going to do any of this. Okay. Now let's see here. I'm trying to debate if you guys should put git ignore. So I'm not going to put a git ignore, but if you made it from complete scratch, what you can do is you can put a git ignore, and usually you would put in like Python, and this will actually ignore certain files. So that way you're not uploading your checkpoints and other extra little junk that you don't necessarily need. Okay, but we can talk about that later. But we're going to pretend we don't have anything on here. So this is going to be a clean repo. I create a repo. Basically, there'll be no commits, and you'll get this sign. If you initialize with a README or a git ignore, it won't look like this. But basically, it's telling you some quick things like, okay, you can create a new repo in the command line, or you can push a new repo from the command line. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to start a completely new project on here. Okay, and there's a few information. This is your way you connect to the GitHub, from GitHub to your repo. It's your remote. So that's why this looks here. So we're going to kind of follow this part. But basically, walking through the code, this is all through command line, is that this right here is going to create a README file. This right here, git init, is basically initializing the GitHub repo, or sorry, not GitHub, Git repo on your computer. Say, hey, this folder right here is going to be a repo for Git. That's what this is doing. And then you see some parts that you might have seen before. Git Add, this is the file. Git Commit, and there's a little message. And then this part right here is probably the more important part of saying, okay, we're going to, what's it called? Add this connection from your Git, which is your local part, to GitHub. And that's what's going on here. And then we actually do a push, which means I'm pushing my code, my stuff in my local computer onto GitHub, onto this repo. Okay, cool. So there's kind of a lot of things going through, but I'll walk you through. So I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here. Let's make this bigger. Okay, so this is just like a terminal, right? So you guys can open terminal, command line if you're, or sorry, not command line, git bash if you're on Windows. Okay, same idea. So in this case, I'm going to put it in a certain part. Let's see here. I'm just going through. So if you didn't see that real quick, I'm just navigating through here. I'm changing the directory to developer, which is just a different folder I have, my structure. And then I'm going all into this folder right here. So now I'm going to make a new folder of my repo, right? So what I can do is say, okay, make directory, and I'm just going to keep the same name as this. So I'm making a new folder essentially on my computer. And then I'm going to go into that folder with CD. Okay, and I'll clear this out. So you can see if I do ls, and you guys know ls is just listing out what's in the file, right? And you'll see me do ls.l, which just means, so it's a nice line, a list of things, and you can see there's nothing in there. So that's good. We don't have anything in there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to first do this part, git add origin with my specific part. And you can see that right there. It's really long. Git remote add and going on with that long URL. That basically is my connection to going through it. But you'll see, I was like, oh wait, you get an error, fatal, not a GitHub repo. That's because we didn't do an initialize. So we can initialize by saying git init, right? And this says, hey, this folder, this directory is going to be a Git repo. Okay, and you can see I actually still don't have anything in there. There are some hidden files in there, but there's still nothing in there. But now if I do, if I do git remote add origin, and then that long thing, this again, it connects my local repo to GitHub. So I can make that connection, which is a push and pull. Okay, so I add this part, and all I did again was just copy this. you also, like, if you didn't have this part, you would have to either do a clone or add this in manually. But if you don't do anything when you first make a repo on GitHub, it'll show you this part right here. You can do it other ways, but I'm just kind of showing you really quickly, like, how to do that. So I do the git remote right here, and you can see again, there's nothing in my repo. So I'm just going to quickly add in a file. So let's just do, I'm just going to show you what it is. So let's do a readme Md. And this is standard right here. If you do a readme.md, that basically tells GitHub, say, hey, whatever's on this part, go ahead and display it. And what's nice is that you can do Markdown. So don't really worry about how I'm editing it, but basically you can think about making a new file, right? And I can say, okay, I want to say this is the heading. Let's do some details. So this will kind of explain what your project is, okay? And in this case, I stop it, right? So now if I look at my files, right, you can see that I have a README here. And in fact, if I do more README, you can see that this right here is in my file. So my file looks like this, okay? So now what we want to do, oops, sorry guys. So let me clear this out. So now what we want to do is, like, okay, we got something in our, we got a file, we got some stuff in our repo, okay? And if I do Git, so all your commands are going to start with Git when you're interacting with Git. So there's a few things. So the first thing is Git Status, which will tell you what is the status of my repo right now, my local repo. And you'll see that it'll say, hey, it's on the branch master, which basically just means, like, you know, this is more detail. We're not going to go into it right now. You can see that there was no commits yet. And right now there's an untracked file. You can see right here that readme.md is in red saying, hey, this file hasn't been added yet. And basically it's saying nothing added to commit, but tracked files, okay? So you can think of Git as 3 parts, okay? Basically, you have your stuff that's already in your repository, and then you can add files, okay? You can add your files with Git Add in the file, and that basically puts into staging. So it kind of like says, all right, nothing is tracked, and you can take your file or files, move it into saying, all right, this is my staging area. Basically, it's saying, all right, you have a bunch of files that will be committed and stored basically in the full, like, log of, like, all your changes. So you're in the staging area. And then once you go to the staging area, you'll take this Git stuff, or sorry, your files, and you'll say, all right, I'm going to commit to making those changes. That's why I think it's like you're making a commitment to say, all right, I'm going to make those changes. And we'll do a Git commit, and that will add it to over here. Say, okay, now this is part of the history of your repository. And then there's a third step, which is basically connecting that directly to GitHub. Basically, you will do a push, and you'll push your commits over to GitHub, so GitHub will then see those parts. So we'll see this part. We're going to do first, take the file, in this case, README. We're going to add it into the staging. Okay, that's the first part. And then we're going to do a commit to commit that change in the files, in this case, making a new file, into my Git repo, and then we'll push our stuff onto GitHub. Okay, that's the basic flow of how Git works. So I'll show you what that looks like. So what I can do now is do a Git add, and I can add the file, in this case, the README. Okay, I could do Git add and then do multiple files, or even I could add a whole folder of files, or just a folder. I could do those things. Okay, so I do a Git add. Okay, if I do Git status now, like we saw before, our Git status before showed there were untracked files, no commits yet. If I do Git status again to say, hey, what's the repo right now? You can see same thing, no commits, but this time it says changes to be committed. And you can see new file, README. So this is saying, hey, there's there's a new file being added in. Okay, and so it's saying, all right, this is my staging. Like you can see, like, to unstage. It's saying, okay, we have these changes, and we're going to commit to those changes now. Okay, so I can do a Git commit, all right, and then we're going to add a message. So usually you do a -m to make it all in one line. There's other ways you can do it, but this is kind of the quickest way. You do Git commit -m, which means your message, and then I'm going to say what my message is. In this case, I'm going to say add readme.md. Okay, And so this basically tells whoever's looking at my Git saying, oh, what changes did you make? And basically say, oh, I just added readme. They might be more complicated. Usually your commit message is very short. It should be a very quick summary of like what happened. For example, you do some exploration. You can say, explored, did graphs for 5 different features, or for feature blah, 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 and you can commit that. Or, for very large things, you can just say, oh, I did all the exploration. But you want to make it detailed, but not super long. Okay, and there's a whole philosophy of what kind of message you have, but we're not going to get into that right now. My goal for you guys is just to show how this works. So again, I have it staged, my file, and now I'm going to commit to that change with that part. So I'm saying, all right, this change is going to be on my history. Okay, so I click enter, and you can see right here, it gives me the information. It says, hey, add readme right here, 1 file changed. I made 3 insertions, don't really matter about this part. But basically the part is that it's confirming saying, hey, you committed this, okay? Now if I do git status, you'll actually see there's nothing on there. No, on branch master, nothing to commit, working, tree clean. Basically it's saying, hey, there's nothing new, there are no new changes, okay? And so that means we made the change, we committed to that change. So I'm gonna clear this part out so you can see this part. So if I still look at my file though, my file is there. You see that, my readme file? It's still there, but the difference is that it's now on my Git history. And in fact, if you want to see your full Git history, you can do Git logs, like log of all your history. And you can see, hey, I have that in my history, okay? And you can see, for example, oh, it's from this user, Mr. Geislinger. It's my email associated with GitHub right here. And then I added the file. This is the description. And then also what date it happens, okay? And then there's some extra information that we're not going to get into right now, but I just want to show you the basics. So that's committed. But you'll notice if I go back to my GitHub, if I go ahead and refresh this, there'll be no changes. Nothing's changed. It's still saying, hey, there's nothing going on here. You still need to set it up. And that's because we didn't push what we have, our changes, our committed changes. We haven't pushed it off or up to GitHub, okay? So the way we want to push it is with Git Push. You can do more specifics, but usually Git Push will be fine because you don't have, what's it called? You don't have any other extra features. So you can do Git Push. Oh, see, I didn't have this part set up. So Git Push, this should work now. There we go. So it says Git Push -u origin. Basically, it's just saying my origin is my guy on my local. My master is here. Sometimes you can just do a Git Push if you already set up some of this up. I didn't set some of that stuff up, so that's why I had to do Git Push -u origin master, okay? And you can see it's giving some information. It says, hey, enumerating objects, counting objects, writing objects, depending on how many commits you're pushing up to GitHub. It goes there, and you can see it says, hey, all looks good, and then it kind of basically gives a confirmation, okay? So now if I refresh this page, we'll actually see that I'll have my commit, and you can see my README. And so you can actually look at my README file right here. If I look at the raw, you can see it's exactly, this is the heading, some details, okay? So that's the basics of what this will look like. So if I do more changes, so I'm gonna just do some, add some random files. So don't worry too much about what these commands are. But basically I'm adding some files. Okay, so you can see right here, oops. You can see my files are listed here, okay? And if I do a git status, you'll see it says, hey, you have 2 files that are new, right? So I haven't done anything of those things. It's like, hey, do you want to add these to your history and stuff like that, okay? I also could have done, let's say we just do to my README file, more info. Okay. So now if I look at what my README has, you'll actually see that there's more information on here. So I didn't make a new file, I just changed the file, right? Which is what most of your commits will be, okay? So now if I do a git status, you'll see that there's a couple things going on here. One is those original untracked files. These have never been added to my history before. But you also know this is, hey, change is not staged for commit. It's a modified file, Okay, so that means like, hey, you made changes to README, you know, do you want to add that up? And so I can. So I can actually do a git commit and then add. I'm sorry, sorry, git add. I was reading this part right here in my head. Git add. And I can add specific files. For example, I can add just the README on here. Okay, I can also add all the files. So if I do git add README, I'll show you what that looks like. You can say, hey, okay, you're making those changes, modified README. Okay, these still don't exist. I don't have to add them in this commit. I can say, you know what, I don't want to add, you know, this one. I just want to add the README was changed and test.txt was changed. So like, okay, let me go ahead and add also test.txt. And now you'll see that those two parts will be in the changes to be committed. They haven't been committed yet, but they're ready to be, they're staged for committing. And this part's not going to be changed right here. So now I can do the whole thing. So, okay, git commit -m, and I'll say update README and new text file. Okay, so something that can explain what's going on. So I do my commit, and then I can do my git push, which of course, good, that worked the first time. So I did my git commit, which now says, hey, you now have stuff that is committed. And then I do a git push to push it onto GitHub. And you can now see, if I look at GitHub by itself, you'll see now that, first of all, README has changed. You see that? And I also have a new file, test.txt here. Notice that I don't have the other text.txt. That doesn't exist yet because I never committed it. I never pushed it, right? So you can see here, it's like, okay, cool. And if I go back to my local machine, I can do a git log, and you can see there's a history of what I did. I did my add README. I did update my commit, stuff like this. And so this is how you can basically, Git is really made for a version control, which means that you can see what happens. So later on, if you want to get more advanced, you can actually roll back and say, hey, like I made a mistake, you know, and I want to go back to this original part. You can actually go back to this specific commit, and this commit's covered by this number right here, which is a hash. Basically, it's an identifier that says this is this specific commit, and you can go back there, rewind it, do your reworkings, make some changes, or make a new completely repo or branch from that, okay? But we're doing really basic right now. We're assuming we're not doing all that crazy stuff, okay? We're just doing git, add, commit, push. So those are the 3 steps. And if I do now git status, you'll see that there is only one file that's not tracked. So I could do something like, okay, let me git add other text. You'll see git status. You can see that it's now ready to be changed, right? Or it's ready to commit those changes. So I'll do git commit -m, and I'll say new other file, just to say something, okay? And then let's say I also want to do is like, okay, you know what? I don't like that other file. I don't like, what's it called? That test.txt. So I can do a git rm, which will remove it from my git repo, test.txt. So I'm just showing you guys some options in here. So you can see, okay, I can actually do a deleted part. So now I say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a new commit to say it's deleted. So I say git commit -m, let's say delete text file. Okay, so cool. And then you can see my git status, nothing there. And if we do a list now, you can actually see my text.txt is gone. If I do my git log, you can see now I have a bunch of commits. I have my README, I had my update the README, I added the new file, and I deleted the text file. So you can see there's multiple parts. You'll notice though that if I look at my GitHub, it's not there. So why isn't it there? Did anyone catch what I might have missed? So what I did here, I did a git add, right? I did git add, git removes, I did git commits, but I never did a git push. So remember that push part is basically saying, hey, here's all my changes, GitHub, go ahead and reflect those changes. So I can actually push multiple commits. So you notice that I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 commits here. but I only have 2 commits on GitHub. And you can actually see add readme, update readme.md in new text file. That directly reflects these parts. That's what that's saying. And in fact, if you look at these numbers, E3334, you can actually see E3343. That's what those numbers represent, okay? So if I wanna now push all my commits, I can say, okay, git push, and I'll push it onto my GitHub, and you'll see all that stuff right here, okay? And you'll see it's taking some time, and then it says, all right, cool, it's all done. And now if I look at my GitHub, you'll see that my text is deleted, my other text right here, and you'll see that there's different descriptions for my commits. And in fact, I have 4 commits now, okay? So this is kind of like the basic process. So if you really had to come through a whole bunch of things, basically git init, or init, right? Initialize your repo right where you are. So if I'm in this folder, it will make this folder a repo, okay? And then you can do Git Add, and then the file, whatever files you change, you can do that, which could be also adding new files, or it can even be modifying the files, and most time will be a modifying of the file, okay, which includes like your Jupyter notebook, okay? You can also do a remove file, but you probably won't do that as often, but just know that is a possible thing you can do. So you do your add, or whatever you need to do to add to the staging, and then you'll do a git commit with a message, right? So you do something like that. This is gonna be there, but like if I do a git commit, and then the last part is git push. And git push will push all of my changes, all of my committed changes up to GitHub. And that's the basic process going back and forth, okay? I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but I kind of gave you guys a very quick, like, hey, this is the main stuff you'll do. There's a lot more stuff you can do with GitHub. I did share out like a tutorial one time, like a couple, maybe a couple weeks ago. That's something to check out. But just know that there's a lot more options, but to be honest, for the project, this is probably the most you'll need to do right now. If there's more stuff that you're like interested in, we can talk about that stuff. But I don't want to give you guys too much information considering that you guys also have your project coming up. Okay, so any questions on this guy? Because I know it's a lot, it might be a little confusing at first. Okay.
So we're going to be doing that whole process for the project. So we're making our own repository. We're not forking, cloning.
Yeah, so the best idea is to make it your own project, because your project's not going to be really a copy of anything else right now. It's going to be your own specific project. So you're really going to start from scratch. You might have a template to kind of start off with, like the idea of what's going on, but you'll notice there isn't like, we didn't say like blank project, right? And there's nothing for you to clone. So the best thing to do is say, oh, you're going to initialize with a new Jupyter notebook.
And then, okay, so when you're adding the files to the staging area, so those, I mean, you just made those up. Those are just random, and they're just, I mean.
Oh, those changes?
Right. So let's say we've saved our PowerPoint as a PDF, right? So how would we do that? Can it be anywhere on your local machine?
Good, that's a good question. So it has to be at least within this repo. So I have a Mac.
So is that basically just a folder on your, like on your hard drive, wherever you're saving it? Like if you were going through the Finder?
That's right. So I'll kind of show you really quickly, is that if I go all the way back up to, developer, right? So that's where I keep my stuff. And so inside developer, I have my workspace. Inside workspace, I have Flatiron. And in this case, I have resources. Sorry, not resources. I have study groups. And then you can see my King City project that we just made, right? And that is a repo. And you can see up here, that's actually, if I do like PWD, that'll show me the full path for how to get there. Okay. And that's literally this folder right here. So if I have these changes here, you can actually see those files, readme and other text.txt. That's exactly what this is here. So a repo really is like a folder of like stuff.
Right. So let's say you just add it, like if you just put it in there, just drag and drop it in that folder. is that going to automatically add it to the staging area?
It won't add it to the staging area, but it will be able to be staged. So if I put like new folder like this, and let's say I drop, can I do a new, okay. Let's just, I move this right here. Okay. Oops, sorry guys. Keyboard's messed up. All right. So now you can see if I do a ls.l, you can see there's a new folder in here. In fact, if I do into new folder, you'll see there's other text.txt, right? So you can see there's a new structure, right? That's the same thing. If I do a git status, it's not, you'll see that there's, hey, you deleted something and you have now a new folder. If you have a Mac, this will show up a lot. Don't add those. Those are basically just extra little things to, it doesn't matter. But basically that new folder is here. Now, if I do my git log, you'll notice that my log hasn't changed at all because I haven't staged anything. I haven't committed anything. Nothing's changed. But now that I have, that's why git status is really useful to say, hey, what's changed? I can now do all of these changes. So for example, I say, okay, let me do a git add new folder. Okay. And now I can say, okay, there's a new file, new folder like this part right here. In this case, it says I deleted this part. So if I wanted to, I could say, okay, git remove other text, oops, other text, text. Okay, so now if I do git status, you'll see that I did, where is it, sorry. It realizes, oh, you didn't like just delete it. It's actually renamed. It says, oh, you put other text.txt into a new folder. But you can see these are the changes to be committed. And then I can commit from there. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't like drag and drop. Whatever's in this folder is enabled to say, hey, you can make changes or you can commit those changes.
Okay, and then so the way that I've been doing is git add period. So
Yes.
is that just updating everything then? Or
Yeah, basically it's like whatever's in that folder, that will be changed. You could do, so for you guys who don't know this, git add, oops, git add dot, like that. That basically is saying git add everything in this directory. Okay, that's why the same reason I can do like git add new folder. Oops, it'll say whatever's in that new folder, that's where you're going to commit. Okay, that's what this dot basically is a shortcut for. It's like everything in this folder, make those changes. Note that if you do have a Mac, that DS store will also be uploaded, which is like super annoying. So what you can do, this is a little more advanced, but I think this is a good thing to have, is you can create a .gitignore file. And this .gitignore file can say, hey, ignore all files that are like this. Okay, so I'll kind of just show you really quickly. It's like .git ignore. Okay, and I can say like, just ignore everything that is a, let's say ds underscore store, oops, like this. So this will ignore all files that are .this store. So if I do this now, if I do more .git ignore, you'll see that's the file. And in fact, if I do a, oops, sorry guys. If I do a git status, you'll see that that git ignore exists in there. So for example, if I do, let me go ahead and commit that change. So this is the only thing that will change right now, right? So I'm going to commit this change and I'll say moved to new folder. Okay. So now if I do a git status, you'll see that that part's gone, but that git ignore is still there. I can now add that .git ignore. So I can say git add .git ignore. There we go. Git commit -m add git ignore. Okay, and that part will now say, okay, whenever there's a .ds store in there, it'll actually forget it. So if you actually look, hopefully, you'll see that that .ds store is there. It's still there. It exists in my folder. But if I do git status, you'll see that doesn't appear anywhere. So that's how you can ignore certain files. So this is actually really important if it's like, hey, I want to ignore like my key. Like I want to ignore, you have your password for like to make a connection to a database. You can add it to your git ignore and say, never upload this file with my passwords, you know, onto it. So that's what that part is. Okay. But again, like you said, Zane, you could do git add dot and then do the same thing. Cool. All right. You guys have any other questions about this? Again, a lot going on right now. I do have, I'll share this out too. This is actually, where is it? Oh, okay, we'll just search for it right here. Oh, it's probably up here. There it is. This is the official GitHub Git cheat sheet, which is pretty good. And this basically is just showing you a bunch of stuff. And you can see there's a bunch of options we didn't even talk about, right? Like Git diff, Git branch and merge and stuff like that. The main thing that you guys will have to know for this project is first knowing, do a git initiate init for your repo, and then your Git status to know what the status of like what's going on right now. You Git add your files, and then maybe a Git reset, but probably not that often, but Git add, and then Git commit, and then you'll do a Git push, wherever that is here, Git push. So usually once you do your -u to find the origin master, you can just do a Git push here. Okay, cool, and I'll share this out too. And I guess I could share out the tutorial that I had before too, in case it's a really good one, I thought, but it does take a lot of time to go through it, and it explains everything. I try to give you guys a really quick, like, this is how you use Git. Cool. I know we're a little over time, but do you guys have any other questions about this, about how this works?